Chris, thank you for being here today, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. Love GearFocus. Love the content you guys are creating, and love the platform. So excited to be here and talk about gear.
Thank you. Yeah, we're excited to be able to chat with you today. And honestly, just to kind of start off, for people who might not know who you are, could you tell us a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Chris Hershman, and I'm a Nikon Ambassador. I'm a photographer and a filmmaker. I'm based out of Chicago, Illinois. I'm in my mid 30s, and I'm coming up on the best years, and I feel it. It's good stuff. Yeah, when it comes to photography, I'm doing, mostly like event stuff. I grew up as a musician, so I was shooting bands. So as a filmmaker, I started in making music videos with my friends, and it just kind of took off from there.
And with all that being said, I kind of want to actually rewind a little bit. And could you tell us about your journey into photography and how you got started into that? Where did that all start from?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it was time to go to college, right? And pick a path. And I wanted to do either sound engineering, go to Full Sail, or go to Columbia for photography. So I was kind of exploring those two routes and ended up going with photography. And I asked my parents to buy me a camera. So we went down to Circuit City, which RIP, and purchased a Nikon D70S kit. And I shot my senior year for the yearbook and began shooting friends' senior portraits. And that's kind of when I really fell in love with portraiture and interacting with people and using the camera to create moments of hangouts and just connecting with people and giving an opportunity for us to hang out and do something fun and creative. So that's kind of how photography started for me.
So it actually was like your senior year of high school that you got into it.
Yeah, my senior year. It was pretty early on.
That's pretty neat. I was curious to ask the question of like if you grew up in a creative household at all and what that was like if you did.
Oh yeah, I would say my family was very theatrical. We grew up in like a pretty active church that was very into theatrics. So there was always like church plays going on, music being played. So I played music in the church. There was just constant amount of activities creatively to do around. And then in high school, I started bands, and my brother moved out, so I turned his bedroom into like my recording room / band practice room, and would have a lot of friends over from high school, and just kept making music and doing creative endeavors. Yeah,
that's really cool. So you were dabbling in a lot of different creative endeavors, and what was it about photography that motivated you to keep growing, and why?
Well, photography, if I saw an opportunity to have a career, to be honest. I said, this is a thing that I love to do. Like you could pay me or not pay me. I would love to do this. But the fact that I could generate revenue from using a camera made sense to me. So it just felt like it accompanied my other creative outputs like music and things of that nature, photographing bands and portraits and things of that nature. So it just felt like this natural thing to try to make a career out of. And, that's what I've done, out of high school. Just crazy.
How have you navigated getting into photography full time? And what did that look like where you started actually doing it professionally?
It's actually a really fun story. My parents bought me my first camera, so I had that covered, but it was a crop sensor with kit lens, and I was like, okay, I was working at Guitar Center, for 4 years, and I was like, okay, always doing photography on the side, and I was like, it's time to make the leap. I'm going to go full-time into photography. It's now or never. And I went to Calumet at the time and ended up, bidding out, this Nikon D300S system with a 50-1.8 or 50-1.4, and just kind of like built this what would be my first camera to be taken serious professionally. And once I got that, I did not have, I don't know, it was probably like $3,000 or something like that for all the accessories that I wanted and needed. I ended up going to a local federal credit union and asking for a loan to purchase the equipment. I was just like desperate to get started. I didn't have the money to get it going. So like I took a loan out for my first, like, it was probably $2,000 loan, and I bought the stuff. And I was finishing off that loan before I even I had sold the camera by the time I was still paying off the loan. But because you just like upgrade. But it was cool. It was just like, it was a moment where I was like, I'm willing to do anything. And I found any means possible to get me my first camera. And man, that camera was the first Nikon that had video features in it, or one of. And I started shooting videos and I shared them online. Luckily, I had a Nikon field rep in the drum shop of Guitar Center, and he was supervising a local, shoot that was happening here with Sandro, actually, Sandro Miller. And I was telling him, I was like, hey man, like I shoot Nikon, I actually shoot video. And it was a time where, Nikon had always been a stills company, and now they're going into video. So like everybody at Nikon's trying to, embrace video more and meet video makers and creators. So I got his email and I sent him my stuff, and then he passed that around internally. And then that began kind of this relationship with Nikon very early on, because I was just one of the first filmmakers on Nikon cameras. And I was shooting music videos, and then one of my first music videos happened to be this band called the Alabama Shakes. And yeah, nobody really knew them when I filmed them, because they were on their like first, real big tour. And when I say real big, they were playing the Hideout that evening, which was, maybe 200 people max. And then we released this music video, and they asked for them to make it their official music video. But we had just recorded it for like a live session, studio session. It wasn't meant for that, but it got turned into that. And then a couple weeks later, they released that video. It had millions of views because the record label just got behind it and pushed it out there, and everybody started falling in love with the Alabama Shakes because they saw them performing live, and they were like, whoa, this is insane. That voice is coming out of this band. And the next time through, the Alabama Shakes had headlined Lollapalooza, So early on, I was kind of really understanding that it's a powerful tool. Video in general, powerful tool for marketing. And I tried to harness that as best as possible to promote bands, to promote products, to promote brands. And that kind of kicked off the directorial career that I've had, which is using the camera to help direct product videos, commercials. But I've tried to do my best to stay in a vertical that I really like, which is music. So I've worked at a lot of music stores doing marketing for video, and try to stick with music related entertainment content clients. Yeah.
That's really cool. I think it's super important for creative people to kind of figure out their niche and what they're really interested in. And it sounds like from the beginning, you have always been involved in music in some capacity. It's something that it sounds like you have a passion and love for. And then you continued to do that even through a different avenue, which is photography and filmmaking. Jumping into photography and then starting to do video, how was the change of pace from being like a photographer to now shooting video? Because they are in a lot of ways so different from each other.
Yeah, I think ignorance is bliss. I didn't know a lot at the beginning. I just flipped my camera into video mode and I started filming, and it didn't matter that I didn't have a ton of gear or ton of lights. I just captured, and I learned with a nifty 50 and my Nikon, and I would create films on the weekend, music videos, and I just focused on creating and editing and making something happen. And I would see my friends be very impressed with how quick I was able to turn around video. video editing came very natural to me. So I saw the spark in people's eyes when they were like, wow, he's like turning stuff around really fast. And so, it didn't matter that I didn't have a ton of gear. I was just turning around product fast, and content fast. And I still kind of stand by that being like the one thing that really helped me out at the beginning, was that I just learned you can't sit on it. You can't wait for it to be perfect. You just have to create something, put it out, and hope that the next time you're going to grow from that experience. And I still think that every time I pick up a camera, every time I go in to edit a project, there's always something new. The gear's evolving, the software, the firmware is changing, upgrading. You're constantly in this cycle of needing to learn and keep up with gear and technique. So, I would say it was a big shift in like turning around content very quick and spending like a lot of time in front of my laptop after filming a lot. But the inspiration was there, and I didn't worry about any of the technical. I would say the thing that slows me down nowadays is the technical, change where I'm like, okay, I can't just put my camera up on a tripod and film this. Like, I need to rig it all out. It's got to have the external monitor. I got to have, so like sometimes I feel like I creatively slow down a little bit. But those things are there for a reason. They're helping enhance the look and the feel, and helping you engage with the audience, and that's all very important too. So
it's funny, the more I progress in doing video constantly on a professional landscape, I look back to the videos that I started making and how simple it was, not having lights, not having all of this different gear. And it's funny to me how a lot of times I find myself almost wishing I could go back to those moments, because, again, when you're shooting something on a professional scale, there's so many more moving parts. There's lighting, there's audio, you can't just rig up your camera on a tripod anymore, like you're saying, and there's all these different avenues. Have you felt a similar way that I felt, where you're like, man, I almost wish I could reminisce and go back to like the old days of making it more simple?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was thinking about, you always have that question about like owning versus renting. And I'm on TikTok a lot nowadays. And I follow a lot of filmmakers who are like, just buy the gear. You're going to love it. And I feel like that's what I did. I feel like I bought the gear. I really love it. But I'm also at this point where I'm like, there's still so much gear. And now I'm at a point where I'm like, okay, well, I'll just rent that gear. So there's this threshold of like, yeah, you should buy the gear, but then there's some gear that you should kind of go into renting. So I got a lot of gas, the gear acquisition syndrome. I'm constantly buying gear, and that's where GearFocus is obviously why I'm so familiar with it. And I think I've completely lost the question. So what was the question again? We went talking about gear.
Just like we could talk about that a little bit too. I while we're on that topic, let's continue that conversation of gear, and just how, when you compare it to growing up, you're learning filmmaking, you're learning photography, it's so simple. And then you start adding all of these things, you start adding all of this gear to your roster, and it becomes, in a way, complicated maybe. But a good question for you is, what has been like the dumbest piece of gear that you've bought that you're like, oh, I bought it and I shouldn't have bought it?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a great one for that. There was a while where I was projecting a lot of images behind people, and onto people. And I was like, I'm going to do so much projecting this year. And my brother had this like 1080p projector that is it's about this big, this tall. It's in a giant road case, and I borrowed it from him, and something didn't work. And I was like, well, I'm going to get this repaired because I'm going to do a lot of projection. So I like took it to a specialist out in Geneva, which was like an hour away from where I was. Man, I sunk about $1,000 into this projector, got it home. I haven't used it once. you know, and it's a 1080 projector. It's not even 4K. It's like the technology has advanced so much from that point, but I don't know why I was like, I need to have this projector in my arsenal. It's going everywhere with me. It's the biggest piece of gear. And now I'm just like, I got to get rid of this thing.
Why do you think that we, as like creatives, feel this pressure to want to buy all of this type of like different type of gear? Why? What is it that we want it so badly?
Well, we want to unlock something. Sometimes we think that gear will unlock something for us. And in most cases, it does. I feel like there was a long period of time where I was into the Petsville lenses, the brass lenses and, that swirly bokeh. And it unlocked something for portraiture for a little bit. And then I was like overusing it. And I was like, okay, this is a piece of gear like I need to use ever so often. And, I have since sold that, but I traded in, for another piece of gear that I thought would be really useful, which was a medium format Fuji film camera, which I sold before I even took a single frame on it because film was getting so expensive, But I encourage that behavior. I'm happy with the gear that I have now, and it came through experimenting with lots of other gear and understanding like what gear can do, what can it unlock for you creatively. And sometimes that just comes through buying and trading gear. I try not to lose my shirt on stuff, but I also try to move stuff fast. Because I'm not looking for top dollar. I'm looking to change gear over quick.
And I think there's something important about being versatile with different camera manufacturers and different products. A lot of times like people can maybe stay within the same brand their whole entire life, and it's important to maybe try out different brands and try different things to have a better understanding for how different camera equipment works, how different lenses work. I think it's totally okay to maybe try out different lenses and understand, okay, I really don't like this look, and it's just not for me, but I really have an emotional attachment to these kind of lenses, I know like, when you're a DP and you work on set, you don't necessarily, most of the time you don't necessarily get a say in what type of camera you might be shooting on. And so it's important to be able to know how to operate that camera. And so it sounds like you've really had your way around different cameras before and have a better understanding, and then have been able to sharpen what your interest is and how you like to operate a camera.
Yeah, absolutely. With the whole directing bit, I'm a photographer, a filmmaker. I like to create, but then there's times I like to produce. I like to direct a piece. And, I love Nikon because I'm a hybrid shooter. I need to quickly, use my camera for photo one day and then flip it over into being a full-fledged, partly cinema camera. But there's definitely shoots where I'm directing and, it just calls for all reds, because we're shooting a Netflix documentary, and we need Netflix approved cameras. So in that case, I'm directing those pieces and I'm getting that footage back and I'm learning how to work with that in post. And it's funny to get to know cameras from, their output, their data, and, to grow preference based off of what you receive in post. But I've enjoyed working with Blackmagic. I've enjoyed working with Red cameras and I don't personally invest in those. I let the people who are really passionate at knowing that camera system inside and out to own them. And I usually will rent a camera from an owner operator and then invite them to set. And, I find that's been a really great result for, getting someone who's used to a camera system who can work quickly with cinema cameras and can also teach me along the way. And, I usually get put on a camera and I, have a good familiarity with it, but I really like to let people who love Red cameras, work on the Reds and bring those people to set. So, that's kind of my journey up to like owning a certain camera, then like kind of passing that off to other people and then becoming a director and a producer on set.
Speaking of like different projects that you've worked on, are there any specific projects or photographs that you've worked on that hold like a special significance to you? And if so, what are they and why?
I would say I don't have a lot of photos on my website, but the ones that I do all have very special meaning to me. Obviously, I feel like they stand for a moment in time where I was either learning a process and I felt like, okay, this is the highlight of using like really shallow depth, or this is the highlight of using double exposure, triple exposure, or, really fun stroboscopic techniques. And so they're kind of like my favorite of every type of photography I've done in the past. And so that's kind of what I would say is like all the photos on chrishershman.com are the best of the category that I feel like I should have to fully represent like all of what I'm capable of creating.
Yeah, I love just going down this path of like photography. I wouldn't consider myself a photographer, but I do take photos. And photography is more something for me selfishly. And I love it because you're able to capture a moment in time where you're going through something, or you're able to remember something or look back on something, which has been huge for me. Have there been any specific like video projects that you've worked on that have really just stood out to you that have been important?
Yeah, I think one of my favorite series was actually following around Joe McNally, who is a Nikon ambassador. And he was showing off, the capabilities of the new Nikon Z6 and Z7 at the time. And Nikon had asked me to just shadow him and film a little bit of behind the scenes of how Joe works in the field. And so me and my best friends shot around America from coast to coast, following Joe, filming him, capturing, dancers in Las Vegas, to break dancers in the Bronx of New York. And it just felt cool to like follow Joe McNally, who's just an absolute legend, who we share the same birthday, July 27th, which I think is awesome. And in a lot of ways, I was kind of like, yeah, I could see how Joe and I are alike. I could see what a career 30 years down the road looks like. I could, so it was cool to like, and I consider Joe like a mentor of mine. So, but I'm particularly excited about how that project turned out. It was a project I ended up asking a colorist to color, who I found through watching Netflix. He had colored the Taylor Swift world tour. I forget which one that went out on Netflix. And I was like, oh, the color's nice on this. Like, who did this? So I looked it up and found the colorist. And so he got to color our footage. And so it was just one of those like gigs where, technology was, really popping off. We were using, 4K finally in Nikons, and like some awesome slow motion mixed with like in-log, and really excited to create a project that had high quality cinema look to it, but it was pulled off with just a couple of friends following a guy around. And I would say the Performers series on Nikon's YouTube of Joe McNally is probably one of my favorite series we've filmed. Yeah.
In today's fast-paced world, content creation has become an essential tool for connecting with audiences and sharing ideas. Whether you're a filmmaker, a live streamer, or a social media influencer, the quality of your content can make all the difference in capturing and engaging with your audience. That's where Hollyland technology comes in. As a leading innovator with wireless video transmission, monitors, microphones, and intercom systems, Hollyland offers reliable solutions to capture high-quality content. Whether you're working on a film set, broadcasting live events, or creating content for social media, Hollyland has the tools you need to elevate your production value. Their cutting-edge technology allows you to focus on capturing the perfect content without worrying about technical issues. If you're looking for high-quality wireless solutions, check out Hollyland's product range. Visit their website at hollyland.com to learn more about their products and find the perfect solution for your needs. Make sure to use the code GEAR15 at checkout for an extra 15% off. And thank you to Hollyland for sponsoring this video. You know, you can show up on a shoot and maybe feel a little bit nervous when there's like pressure riding on, you know, you capturing the moments. How do you work through those kind of steps of knowing what you're needing to capture and how you need to do it? Like, what's the mental process that you're putting yourself through?
I actually, I was just writing a little bit of an article about visualizing your gig, you know, and let's take it away from that Joe McNally gig and just say, you know, most event capture moments. They usually, whether a client is giving you a shot list or you have to deliver a set of images that you basically have to create this list for on your own, you know, I like to sit and visualize before the gig. I like to pack my gear a day before. But I try to make sure that my equipment matches my visualization. Meaning, you know, like, am I going to overpack for this thing? Am I going to have a room where I can put my gear securely and get in access quickly in case I need to swap out gear? And, you know, can I bring, you know, my entire kit, or do I need to wear my entire kit on my backpack? You know, and that really changes how you approach shooting an event. And that's a real factor when it comes to, you know, actually being able to perform properly, capture your talent properly. And so, yeah, I would just say the things I look for are, you know, capturing the small moments, but starting wide. So let's just say, like, you know, it's an event where people are lining up outside. Like, that's part of the story of what's happening that evening. You know, so how can I capture the entire event when I look at it as an event? You know, I start from outside and then I move my way in. I start from very wide with photography, and then I start to narrow in and get tighter with my lensing, get tighter with my storytelling. And that's kind of been a really good process to help me understand what kind of gear I need to pack, how I'm going to wear it when I'm shooting, and help me basically chunk a big shot list down.
Yeah, there's something so powerful about, you know, preparation, obviously. And that's something that I think can be overlooked a lot of times when it comes to shooting. People maybe get in their head a little bit and they just think, oh, I'm just going to go shoot it. And they'll like throw all their gear in their bag, which can also be detrimental to the shoot, you know, especially if you're showing up to a shoot where you only have enough room to like carry it on your back. All of a sudden you're like, oh, why did I bring all this stuff? You know, so I think it's really cool to hear that you have to really visualize what that's going to look like for the shoot that you're about to embark on, which is super neat. Now, to like stretch that out a little bit more, you go from shooting, you know, portraits, some music videos by yourself. You're editing them by yourself. And I kind of want to dabble in this a little bit more because you started adding colorists to the roster. And how is it working with a team? And how have you learned to adapt from being kind of a solo shooter, editor, kind of all of the things, to adding people into the team?
Man, that's a great point. I think that kind of leads into this place where I am now, where I really love working with teams to create video and to create a project and pull it off to execute, right? So I love producing because I get to work with every department involved in creating larger projects. You know, the larger you get, you realize, oh, I can't just have like my buddy or two help me. Like, I need to kind of have people who are specialized in this thing. Like, I need a DP, I need a gaffer, I need grip, I need an AC. And so I've really enjoyed learning those roles and then hiring folks to come in and execute that properly. So one of my favorite things about being a director and a producer right now is I get to meet all of these excellent people who are as passionate about, you know, rigging up cameras and but they don't want to touch lights. You know what I mean? They love lenses. Like, and but they don't want to deal with other things on set. And same for when you meet these lighting folks and they're like, no, we're not touching camera. You hire someone for that, but I'm going to light this thing, and that's their passion. So as your productions grow, you might say, okay, I need a dedicated DP for this because I need to worry about camera, and someone else needs to go worry about lights, and you hire a gaffer, and then they're like, well, you need someone to carry the stands. Let's get a grip, and so you start learning the roles just because you're trying to push yourself more and more. And so how do you learn the roles? Well, you try to push your productions more and more. And that just comes from this mentality that I think some of my early film friends kind of, championed, which is like, try to beat the last project you did. It can be as simple as that, and that's what we did. Is we would examine, we would sit down, and we'd say, we did this last time. What can we do that's different, that we haven't done? Or what have you done on other shoots at a small scale that we should bring to a bigger scale in this shoot? And so like a real good example of that is one of my good friends, Rob Stern. He was filming this kind of scene for one of his horror films, and he used a projector that he looped behind a plasma screen behind the actor so that it would have this like infinite ghosting loop. So you basically take the camera, you take the HDMI out of it and put it into the TV, right? And we were talking about a music video idea, and so the next idea was like, all right, let's take the camera and then plug it into a projector and put it on a big screen behind somebody. And so that idea just grew, and then we needed more people to pull that off. We needed dedicated people to pull that off. And, that's a small example of how, you just take an idea, grow it to be something bigger, and find out what you need to pull that off with personnel and equipment, and just constantly beat the last thing that you've tried to pull off.
There is something so valuable about expanding a team and working with a team, because you can execute that project so much better when you're not worried about everything. And I think a lot of people right now who might be starting out, they are doing everything, right? They're shooting it, they're planning it, they're prepping it, then they're editing it, they're coloring it, they're doing sound design. And there is something so nice about adding people incrementally to that project to just kind of outdo the last one. And I think that can be said for adding people into it, by outdoing the last project and just saying like, okay, hey, last project, I shot it, but how about this next project? I actually bring a DP in to take care of it, or somebody to do sound design. I kind of experienced this firsthand just recently. I shot a project, and we hired somebody to do the sound design for it. And that was like so nice to be able to like just send it off to sound, and then they mixed it, and I didn't have to worry about it. You know what I mean? And the bigger your projects get, the more you just need people on set with you, helping you. And then you get to focus on what you need to focus on. How has that transition been, giving you the opportunity to focus on what you're needing to focus on a project?
Yeah, I mean, I've gone from being like a photographer to a filmmaker to a director to like a producer of film production, It's enabled me to have like a different career path than I ever thought I could have, just by trying to expand into bigger productions and grow productions. Because once you're able to do that, then you're able to take on more and more responsibility. The more responsibility that you can handle, the more opportunities, the more large opportunities you're typically handled or handed. And, with that, I'd like to think that my personal new objective is to grow into projects that are larger than I've ever done in the past, in a sense of scale of people, scale of production, scale of media. So like right now I'm filming, what is hopes to be a Netflix grade quality documentary. So we're taking red cameras and opening them wide up and just saying, okay, the largest format, the highest, quality this camera can pump out, we need to film on that. So it's like turning all of the technology all the way up, which means your hard drives and your storage game and your like everything just gets elevated and increased. It's been a really great learning experience through that process, but it's just about elevating, and seeing what more you can take on. And before it was like, when you're starting, you're like, okay, how do I use two cameras at one time? That's how this starts. If you can figure out how to film two cameras at once, great. Okay. And then add separate audio that's not running to the cameras, and then sync that audio up to the two cameras. Add a third camera, add multiple audio sources, and then that's where you land at, where I'm at now, is you just tried to grow yourself one project, one item at a time. And the more you get the hang of it and you grow confidence in that, then you can continue to grow your career just because you've figured it out. It's as easy as that in my eyes.
So in terms of elevating the production of your shoots, you're dealing with more people. And so I wanted to ask, how do you approach collaborating with other creatives, whether that's models, stylists, directors, and how do you create that cohesive vision on a project?
That's a great question. Recently, I had to get to know a few New York crew members. And we were about to shoot something in New York and just needing to increase our base of contractors out there. So, I got on the phone with all the different roles and I asked them what they love to do on set and what they think their expectations are within that role, and how I, as a producer, can enable them to do their best that day and not maybe ask them things that they're not actually familiar with or things of that nature. So instead of just like hiring people, I like to get to know people. I like to know what people's strengths are. One AC is, going to be different as far as experiences and skill set from a different AC. A lot of DPs like to work with certain types of lights. So I just try to have real open conversation about like, what drives you? How can I best work with you? And I think growing that personal connection with people is going to make your time on set so much better, because they're like, okay, this person really cares about my experience on set and is obviously trying to pull the best out of me so that we can make the best product. So, they go into a project very inspired and ready to work hard. And, I feel as a producer director, I'm the most prepared I can be, and I know how to proceed with working with new people.
Our communication with people is vital to a fluid running system, but also like your relational connection with them can go even deeper, and it can help the process of a shoot so much more. When you've been able to connect with people and understand like how they operate, how they function, and then you can all kind of have a better understanding for who everybody is. And it sounds like you've been able to do that really well and just be able to make a really smooth running machine when on set.
I was just going to say, I feel like that is my goal at all times, is to make the perfect production. I'm constantly visualizing the last production, thinking, oh, okay, we could have done better here or there. And I make those changes for the next production. I keep all of that in notes, and I try to just grow. Okay, we talk about growing technique, going from one camera to two camera. You can grow your technique in making clearer call sheets, getting them out on time. Maybe the catering was just like, just don't do pizza, hopefully early on you learn pizza slows a crew down. make sure that there's healthy, options for people. And so my experience is that I'm constantly trying to create the best working environment for talent and crew and for myself.
That's so important. I was listening to a Ryan Booth podcast episode where he interviewed the Daniels, who shot everything, or they directed Everything Everywhere All at Once. And Ryan was talking about how he DP'd a project for them, and they had this conversation about Ryan's fascination with how they ran the crew and how it felt like a summer camp experience. Every morning they'd have the whole crew get up and do like stretches and yoga, and they'd do like a fun activity right before they went to go to shoot. And it really opened my eyes to the understanding of creating that healthy relationship on set so everybody can be on their best. They can be in their best headspace, to be able to perform on set, whether that's a DP, an AC, a gaffer, or even the talent, in the project. So it's been funny to learn for me how much a director has to really manage people.
My job right now is to make sure that everybody has everything that they need, and what everyone needs is a good experience, So like, I'm just considering everybody's experience, and sometimes that's as simple as like being as thoughtful enough about where the crew's going to park, and if we're going to compensate them for parking. Those small little things like can set the day off and make it great, or they can like make it disastrous. So I just really like thinking through all the little different intricacies and thinking on behalf of each crew member. And I think that's kind of the elevated experience that I like to make sure all of our sets have, and really helps the day. And you're not so focused on, the actual. I shouldn't say that. I was going to say the actual shoot. I was just going to say, if the shoot goes bad, at least like whatever happened in front of the camera, at least whatever happened on the back end, helps support and set you up for a really good day. And I think anything you can do to set your crew up to have the best possible day is the job of a great producer and director.
And I think when you're in the right headspace, in a positive mindset, it helps the crew also follow along with that, and then they can be flexible to the changes. Because we know anytime you show up to a set or a shoot, whatever you have planned is probably going to change a little bit. There's probably going to be some things that aren't going as planned, and you need to be so flexible to that change. And if people are kind of grumpy to begin with, it's not going to go over well, right? But if they can be in a really healthy mindset while shooting and operating, it helps out so much more.
100%. Yeah, I agree. I think some of my favorite shoots were just like the experience that I had on set, not what we captured. Some of the things I remember is like, wow, okay, that was the best crew I ever worked with. Everybody got along. Everybody felt like we created something really magical together. So those are typically my favorite shoots.
Yeah, those are super cool to hear, and I love being able to hear those kind of experiences. I was listening to Ryan Booth, who's a director, DP. He has a podcast, and I was listening to it, and he was talking to the Daniels, who directed Everything Everywhere All at Once. And he had mentioned that he was DPing a project for them years ago, and how fun of an experience it was, and how they made it feel like a summer camp. And their reasoning for that was they wanted everybody to feel like it was a fun, positive experience. And the benefit that they were able to receive from that is that just everybody was in a good mood, and everybody was able to be flexible to the changes that needed to happen. And it was just really cool to hear that and understand, like, you can create a really positive environment, and it's going to help and benefit the production, but also the whole entire team.
I love the Daniels and Ryan Booth. I've definitely heard his name out there. It's really amazing. Sadly, right now, we're maybe not sadly, but at the moment, most of our shooting is like going to different cities. It's my dream to fit one film crew on like a tour bus, and we just take off to multiple cities all together. So hopefully I could put something together like that. That's kind of like mixing all of my experience of being in a band with like filmmaking, and I love the idea of it.
One of the questions I have for you, as you've continued to do photography and filmmaking on a regular basis every single day as a profession, how do you stay inspired and continue to push the boundaries of your creativity? And what does that look like?
Okay, well, I'll start with what does it look like right now, because that's probably what leads to me staying inspired and sourcing inspiration. If you went through my TikTok right now, my For You page is all like, did you know in Premiere Pro you could do this, that, and the other? And I'm constantly learning from people on these quick short form videos and then saving those. And then I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. And then you come across a project where you're like, oh, wait, I saw something on this. Let me go look it up real quick. So I'm kind of like a short format king. Versus like maybe watching, long tutorials on YouTube. And that's something that I can get in daily, So that small little piece of information is like reminding me I'm an active learning filmmaker. I've not learned it all. There's still more that, you've been working in Premiere Pro for I don't know how many years, but you still don't know it all. And then I'm also learning graphic design. And I had a team member that I collaborated with. His name's Curtis on some projects internally at my agency that I'm currently the in-house producer and director at. And so he was kind of tossing me some stills that I was including in my videos, and we were making GIFs together for this one project. And I was like, man, I love your design. Like I want to learn more about graphic design and really master text and graphics within my video. So I've taken a big step into learning After Effects, Illustrator, and really trying to combine all of those things, which is like so far from like cameras and lenses, you know what I mean? But it's a part of knowing where your weaknesses are in places that you can grow. And, I'm constantly looking for different areas. So, technology through TikTok and, meeting and collaborating with other creatives, I think is how I currently stay inspired and constantly learning.
There's something so exciting about the creative industry because it is ever changing, and we don't know everything, and we haven't learned everything, and we never will. And for me, there's something exciting about that. And it sounds like it's exciting for you as well, as you're discovering new things every single day. But then also there's something so rewarding about working with other people and being motivated and inspired by the work that they're creating or the things that they know, and being able to kind of like have feedback from one another and just become the better version of you every single day.
Oh, the feedback is so important. The feedback is crucial. And, sometimes when you're independent contractor, when you're freelance photographer, filmmaker, it's hard to really get that feedback, which is why I really highly suggest people who feel like they need that and want that to submit portfolios for review and critiques. I'm certainly one who has been able to critique for people who are trying to learn, trying to get to the next place. I think that's an excellent place where, ambassadors of certain brands, especially Nikon, we have a very strong feeling around mentoring, educating, and inspiring people. So, I'm very open to anyone ever asking, how can I grow my craft? And, how can I, where do you see room for improvement? So I've gotten that through my current team right now, just through working on projects. But, when I was not working on a team and it was me solo, it's very isolating. And I highly suggest, getting feedback from other people.
There is something hard about getting feedback from other people when you don't have those resources. Other than just submitting to you, are there some resources or people that you know that could be helpful, or practices of figuring out how to send that to somebody?
I would definitely look up the Nikon Ambassador page and find an ambassador who shoots the type of photography or filmmaking that you have like your center focus on, and reaching out to them. Everybody's so active on socials. I think if you went to any Nikon ambassador and asked them to help critique, like that would definitely be a thing. And I certainly have like my lane, but there's a lot of diversity, especially in sports. Like, oh my gosh, we have some of the best sports photographers in the world. Um, but let's just say you want to stick with a manufacturer that you prefer. Go to their ambassador page and try to find someone through there. I'm sure there's photography discords. So Discord is definitely a place I've seen a lot of engagement within critiques. So I would say that, and I also still subscribe to or I follow Facebook photography groups. Facebook photography groups are certainly a real big source of community still for photographers.
Speaking on that relationship that you have with Nikon, I kind of want to ask, how did you even get involved with the ambassador program with Nikon? How did that look? What did that turn into? And then how long have you been doing it since then?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier that I had like made some music videos and it got sent to Nikon, and that was the very first start, and that was so early on. I mean, that was 15 years ago. You know what I mean? So what happened was they had asked me to write some blogs for them about how I use Nikon cameras to capture music videos. And we would do more videos as technology grew for the video side of Nikon. And I was then asked to come speak at trade shows like NAB and CES. And so through building this relationship of just being someone who uses Nikon in my everyday job and being able to speak about it and being open to answering questions and, having interviews and things of that nature, when it came time to expanding the ambassador line, they had just given me a call and said, we think you'd be a great fit for this lineup. And I quickly said yes. And, the program is there to inspire, mentor, and educate people on photography and how to get to where we are as professional photographers and filmmakers. So, that's part of the journey. The journey isn't about getting free gear. A lot of people are like, oh, I would be an ambassador if they would send me free gear. And it's like, that's not really what it's about. The program is about helping people. And I think that's really cool that that's where they stand with that program. And I've always loved the people who have brought me in and have given me those opportunities. I'm very thankful for Nikon for all they've done. And I'll continue to shoot Nikon. I don't have a reason why I would leave. Yeah.
After all of your years as a filmmaker, a photographer in the professional field, after all of the things that you've done and accomplished, what is one piece of advice that you would share with somebody who's starting out today as a young creative who's wanting to get into the field?
I'd say there's 3 important pieces of equipment that you need to start. And that's a camera body, a lens, and a computer. Focus on mastering those 3 things, and then once you realize what you need next, kind of allow that to force its way into your workflow. I would say don't feel like you can't make something professional or worth quality on an older piece of equipment. Take what you have and make whatever you can the best of your ability with what you have, and then look at how you can make it better the next time. Maybe some people you just need to figure out how to like film something, put it on a computer, edit it with like, a fade in and a fade out, and export that. And that needs to be your homework assignment. But bringing things to a completion, to a finish, is what I think is very important when you're beginning. Is that the process needs to end at some point. Pick up a camera, start filming, start photographing, but take it off the memory card, edit it, export it, put it on your phone, and share it. Share your work. I would say if you've learned anything, is to just share your work, because you're going to get feedback from it. You're going to get feedback from the experience of doing it. So the exercise of sharing your work is sometimes more about you learning than it is about you teaching someone else.
I love hearing that, because I think we get stuck in waiting for things to be perfect, and we never actually finish the product. And if you can actually just finish what you're making, you're already 2 steps ahead of what other people are dreaming about. And I think that's huge. So, Chris, it's been great chatting with you.
Yeah, likewise, man. Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed meeting you, and I love GearFocus. GearFocus is a platform that I actively use. It's a platform that helped me sell my DSLR lenses in order to afford purchasing my mirrorless lenses. So it served a very crucial part in me elevating my equipment. So I'm happy to help give back to a community that I feel like helped me out in a time of need. So thank you guys for all you do.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you being here and just sharing your wisdom and insight on how you've navigated the industry and accomplished all of the cool things that you've been able to do. So, and next time I'm in Chicago, I should definitely hit you up. I would love to grab coffee.
Come by. We're doing coffee. We're doing pizza. We're doing hot dogs, Chicago style.
We got to do the whole thing. Sounds good. Chris, thank you so much for being here, man.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.